Hey everybody, hope you're doing well, and thanks for joining me tonight. I'm really excited for the conversation we're about to have. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is going to be with us for the next half hour or so. So I'm going to try to bring her in. This is always the awkward slash suspenseful part because we got to make sure that we're actually finding the right request to go live. All the rest of you, thank you for your enthusiasm, but we're just going to go live with the governor right now. Although I appreciate your joining as a viewer. And I think we are about to bring in the governor. Let's see. Here we are.
I'm
Governor,
here.
how you doing?
I'm good. Mayor Pete, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for taking a little time to talk. I've been really excited for this one, especially as I'm starting to claim the Michigander side more and more. I married someone from Michigan. I'm full of really narrow neighborhood questions like how close are we on getting 9196 south of Grand Rapids sorted out so I don't have to cut through Zealand on M6 when I'm headed up north. But I know people from around the country are excited to talk about your leadership and about the campaigns we believe in. So I'll leave my personal questions aside. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, Mayor Pete. That's my new phrase for 2020. I mean, this has been a challenging year, but you know what? I am determined, as I know you are. We've got a lot at stake, and it's on all of us to make sure that 2020 ends up on a high note.
Well, that's what I keep thinking about too. 2020 has obviously been a painful year. This decade's gotten off to a rough start, but it's not over yet. We get to decide how this year is going to end, and that's one thing that, of course, especially important in Michigan and here in the Midwest. Of course, over the weekend we got really heartbreaking news about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone I know was important to all of us, and I know you have a lot of thoughts on her leadership and what she meant. What have you been reflecting on as you look at her legacy and her life?
I got to tell you, on Friday night when the news came out, it was just devastating. And I know there's so many people who felt just like me. I saw Chasten's post about looking at his wedding ring and thinking about what it means in terms of who's on the United States Supreme Court. We don't talk about it and think about it every single day, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg she was a hero. I mean, as a lawyer, as a woman, as the mom of girls, she's the kind of person that I've always looked up to and admired. And I met her for the first time earlier this year, back in January. And we didn't talk long, but I just to have that moment to chat with someone who I've always looked up to. And I just think it's a tough moment for all of us in this country for a variety of reasons. But what she stood for and justice on the court and being a conscience on that court and even being able to reach across, usual partisan lines to find common ground where she could. She really was the kind of leader that I feel so fortunate to have been able to witness and benefit from the work that she dedicated her life to.
I'm so glad you got to meet her. That's wonderful. She spoke here in Notre Dame a few years ago, and I remember just the whole town was electrified, and she spoke to thousands. It was in the basketball arena, and just her wit and her wisdom really just I think have endeared whole generations to her. And tons of things I want to get into, but we got so many great questions already. Folks tweeted and sent over Instagram questions, and there's one that's right on point. So I just want to put it to you and see what you think. Katrina said, after RBG's death, I'm terrified what will happen next. The LGBTQ rights, women's rights, healthcare. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, Katrina, I feel the same way. I mean, it is. We all have anxiety. My dogs are fighting. We're going to try to get them out of the room. If you hear that, their names are Doug and Kevin, by the way. Really strange names my kids picked up. But, we all feel that anxiety. And I woke up Saturday morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning. It's when I usually start my days. But I got up and I worked out and I shed some tears because I saw the coverage. And I thought, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her whole being, everything she did was about fighting against a tide, right? And getting back into the battle even after a loss or after a tough setback. And so I think in her spirit, we work harder. We do everything we can to be victorious this year. And we don't take our eye off the ball and we don't stick our head in the sand. This is a moment where we have to rally. That's what she would do. That's what she always did. We all benefited from her work, and that's why we've got to take it on ourselves to continue it.
Well said. It falls to us, right? And it's within our power to honor her legacy. That actually leads really well to another question from Sudan, who asks, are Democrats doing enough to win Michigan?
We're working our tails off. I can tell you that. You know, with COVID-19, we can't do a lot of the traditional things that we do. And I know Mayor Pete, we're cut from the same cloth. We want to be out there with the people. And yet with COVID-19, we've got to show that we get it and we're going to protect people and we take this seriously. And that's how Joe Biden's going to lead. So we are doing everything from phone banking to Instagram Live to we've got a robust campaign called the One Campaign in Michigan. Anyone who's here who wants to get involved, it's a phenomenal effort from the State House to the White House to make sure that we turn out Democrats and that we elect Democrats, because lives are counting on us to get this election right. And so anyone who's paying attention who wants to get involved, the One Campaign is a phenomenal way that we can plug you in and you can put your energies, your anxieties into something really constructive and help us make sure Michigan falls on the right side of the issue this year.
That's great. And so much, of course, depends on Michigan. Now, you beat the ticket by an awful lot in your own election. So what advice do you have? I mean, I think if I remember right, this came down to 10,000 votes in 2016. 2 years later, you won by 400,000 votes. What's the most important thing in order to make sure that we do succeed from a leadership perspective?
Well, I think in 2018, we stayed focused on the issues that really matter, right? I always call it the dinner table issues, but what is front and center for people, no matter who you are, where you come from, whether you're in rural Michigan or you're in a downtown city, whether you are an auto worker or a professor or someone who is, at the grocery store, working in the grocery store clerk and stayed on the front lines. Every one of us is worried about COVID-19. Yep. Every one of us is worried about what it means for our livelihoods on top of our lives. So I do think that the Biden team, the agenda that is really centered on getting our arms around the pandemic so that we can get back to work and stay at work. We know that this recession, that 200,000 lives lost at this moment, didn't have to be this way. It was a failure of leadership by the Trump administration, a failure to take this seriously, a failure to tell us how serious it was. And we know that is front and center for folks. And that's what we talked about. I talked about fixing the damn roads was our call to action. But right now, more than ever, it is about getting our arms around this pandemic and getting our economy back on track so that people can take care of themselves and their families.
And I think part of how you've earned even more respect and regard this year around the country is that it's been very clear that you've just been laser focused on protecting the lives of Michiganders during this pandemic. And I've really admired how you've done it without regards to politics. And you're standing up for the right thing. If that puts you crosswise with the president, so be it. If that lines you up with the president, so be it. But you're doing your legal duty to look after the safety of those you serve. So I know that nothing about this should be political, but since we haven't seen the kind of leadership that we really needed in the White House, I'm wondering, as a governor who gets up in the morning trying to make sure that people are safe in your state, what would it mean to have a president, to have a White House that was not political about these things, that had to focus, that believed what scientists and doctors had to say? How would that change your ability to meet this moment and to beat this pandemic?
Well, I mean, our whole nation would be safer because we would have a national testing strategy. We would have a leader on the national level who would advocate mask wearing and explain why it's important. We would have a procurement strategy around everything from swabs to N95 masks. This country is a leader in so many ways, and yet we are a laggard when it comes to COVID-19. So my ability to be a governor would be, I mean, I would have so many more tools at my disposal to ensure that people are safe and that we keep this economy re-engaged. It's not one or the other. One begets the other. If the health crisis runs out of control, the economic pain is going to be that much worse. And that's why if we have a strategy around COVID, we can actually make sure that we build our economy back better. And that's why I think this is so crucial, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're a Michigander or you're from Indiana. What do we call Indianans? Hoosiers?
Hoosiers,
Indianans?
right. Yeah, no, never Indiana, always Hoosier. It's just like when I hear the word Indiana, it's like how you must feel when you hear the word Michiganian. It's
right.
Not a word, not a thing.
So whether you're a Hoosier or you're a Michigander, I mean, having leadership that understands how to protect people, how to get things done, how to ensure that we as a nation are protecting the people of this country. That's how we get back on track, and it won't happen until that happens. And that's what I think is so critical for us to make sure people understand that link. If the health crisis is out of control, the economy is going to suffer, and it's going to suffer for longer, and it's going to be more profound, and it's going to be harder on our families and our businesses.
Right. It's not either or, right? We can't have the economy that we're all so eager to get to unless we get on top of this. Speaking of Michiganders, my favorite Michigander just walked in, so I got to invite Chasten to say hello.
Hi, Chasten.
Hey! I
I
couldn't
heard you were on
find my...
Mackinac this weekend. You got to let me know next year when you come up. I've already invited you.
I can't wait. Yeah, I had to get Pete to bike the island. I couldn't find my "I support that woman from Michigan" shirt, so I thought this was the next best thing.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for your leadership. I truly, it means a lot. With the majority of my family being in Michigan, they're really proud of your leadership as well. You have a lot of fans in Traverse City.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. I'll let you two talk about saving democracy. Good luck.
Laura had a question, speaking of that woman from Michigan, which is such a badge of honor. Laura said, I wish that guy in D.C. was half as strong. Another admirer of your leadership on COVID. And so Laura's question is, what's the governor's advice for Vice President Biden when he's president of the United States?
Well, I'm flattered that you think I have advice I could bestow on someone like Joe Biden. I don't think he needs advice, but you know what? He calls frequently to find out what's going on because he really does care about people. He asks questions. He wants to understand. And I think that the biggest thing that sets the current occupant of the White House apart from Joe Biden and governors who are doing their best to get it right is hubris versus humility. Joe Biden knows he's not an epidemiologist. And so he's going to seek out and learn from the best people in science that he can. He already is. The guy in the White House thinks he's the smartest person on the planet and has not sought out information so that he could make educated decisions. And I think humility versus hubris. I mean, and I don't need to tell Joe Biden that. He knows it. He embodies it. He gets it. He's been through H1N1 and through so many other crises that we as a nation confronted, and he's helped lead us through them. So I've got every confidence that he's going to do well. But if he needs any help from me, he'll have it.
It's a great point. I mean, he calls, he listens. Every encounter I've had with him, kind of before, during, and after the primary campaign, had that spirit. He really wants to know what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, what you think. And it would have been very easy for him, especially after getting the nomination, toward some of the people who are competing with him to say, thanks for coming out, and you never hear from him again. Instead, he's reaching out to us, and I know as a governor with so much on the line, paying such close attention to how he can support Michigan. Another crisis we're going through right now is a moral reckoning over what has really built up over 400 years, very much in the here and now, when it comes to racial justice. You're governor of a very racially diverse state in the state of Michigan. And so there's a question from Chloe that I thought goes to the heart of part of where so much of the change needs to happen. Chloe wants to know, what is one interesting or difficult conversation you've had with a fellow white person, a friend or family member, about the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's a question that certainly hits home for me. I've talked to and encountered a lot of people who sometimes even have trouble hearing the word systemic racism without feeling like maybe they're being accused of something. That asking those of us who are white to consider what it would actually mean to walk away from forms of privilege and forms of injustice is some kind of suggestion that you have a character flaw, when really everybody has to be part of the solution here. And of course, it's among white Americans that most of the change, or all of the change when it comes to these injustices, has to actually happen. So I would love to know if you had a similar experience and how you think about that as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So Michigan was one of the first states to put out our demographic data around COVID. And we did it because my chief medical executive is an African-American ER doc. And she was looking at the data and said, this has an incredibly disproportionate impact on people of color. And we got to let people know, especially African-Americans. And that drove a lot of our work. But Michigan, Illinois, and Louisiana were the first 3 states to make that available. And it really changed the conversation and empowered us to educate and to protect people. So through this process, we created my lieutenant governor, first African-American lieutenant governor of Michigan. I appointed him to chair a task force on racial disparities. And one of the things that we did was create implicit bias training for everyone in the medical profession, licensed and in the education of. And in talking with people about this, it's very clear that when, as to your point, you say we need to understand implicit bias, someone who hears that, I think sometimes might think that you're calling them racist. And then they get defensive and closed. And so it's really been an education that we've had to have during this conversation when I've done radio interviews saying, are you calling all the doctors racist? And I said, no, I'm saying that every one of us has biases. They're from our upbringing. They're from different experiences. We don't even know they're there. That's what implicit means.
Right.
And that's why it's important for us to be able to have the tools so that we can understand when they come into play so we can correct them. And I used an example, not around race, just to make my point, that when we hear a really thick Southern accent, what kind of assumptions do you make about that person? Do you make assumptions about where they grew up or what kind of education they have or what their family's like or about their politics? And invariably, we all make assumptions about everything. It's part of our innate need to survive. We have to learn and make assumptions as, so we're deductive, brain works, but also it can cloud a real judgment, a real opportunity to see facts in a new light. And that's why I think it's so important. And so I've had a lot of these conversations where we have to take it back and say, no, I'm not calling you, I'm not making any judgment about you. I'm just saying every one of us brings that to the table. Exactly. And we have to seek to remedy it.
Exactly. It's one of those conversations where leadership makes all the difference, right? The tone you set, the ability to open people up, or invite all of us to open up and think about what's got to change. Kevin's got a question that gets me thinking, because I think, so many of the most powerful voices in this moment, some of them aren't even old enough to vote, on climate, on certainly in the movement for Black Lives, on issues around gun safety and common sense reform. We're hearing from the youngest generation, and I guess I'm finally old enough to be talking about a different generation when I talk about a young generation coming up. So Kevin's 16, and his question is, I'm 16 and I'm worried about the decline of democracy. How do you plan to stop this?
Well, Kevin, thank you for your question. I hope that when you got your driver's license, you registered to vote, because I think that that's a really important tool that everyone who is 18 and above has to protect our democracy. My daughter is going to be voting for the first time this year. And I know that so many people in your generation have got thoughtful solutions to problems that we are confronting, are facing them and are thinking about things in ways that I never was at the same age. And that gives me great hope. That is part of the conversation around racial justice in America is being driven by our young people to a large extent. I think that that's really important, and I welcome that and encourage that. So how do we protect democracy? Well, we vote. We vote and make sure that people who understand the rule of law, people who will fight for the fundamentals that this country was founded on, hold people accountable. I think that some of the fear mongering and misuse of power that has happened during the Trump administration is an incredible threat to our democracy. And that's why what I plan to do about it is I plan to vote. I plan to register everyone that I can. I plan to do everything I can to ensure they get their ballots and they get them in on time. And I continue to do my job to hold people accountable who are on this ballot, because there are high stakes in this election, and it may be, I know we're going to say it's the most important election of our lifetimes, but it may be one of the most important elections in our nation's history too.
Well said. And you're right, democracy doesn't just because it's on paper doesn't mean we're a democracy unless we go out there and live it. And it's voting, it's holding leaders accountable, it's fixing what needs to be fixed, and that all starts. And by the way, even if you're not yet voting age, you can volunteer. You can talk to family members. You can speak up, and we've seen what a big impact that can make.
Yeah, Kevin can work the polls too if he's in Michigan. He can sign up right now. It's 16. You can sign up to work the polls if you want to.
That's a big thing. You know, I worry sometimes we're not hearing enough about how important that is, because there's this idea that, you know, folks who work the polls are retirees, which often is traditionally the case, but especially with the pandemic going on, you know, we need poll workers. That means a whole new generation being ready to sign up and do it. So that's great to know how that works in Michigan. Elle or Ella, I think Elle has a question. Who will you be thinking of when you cast your ballot this year, as well as how are you voting? So I'll share my answer. In Indiana, it looks like they're unfortunately not going to do what they did in the primary and allow us to safely vote from home because of the pandemic. If that remains the case, then I expect Chasten and I will be voting early in the county city building, but we're making our plan right now to be sure we're ready to get that vote in as early as we can. And I'll be thinking about family members, including my in-laws in Michigan who have a small business, who rely on the ACA for their health care. And it's really life and death for so many people that we know and love that we get this election right. But who's going to be in your mind, Governor, and what's your voting plan?
Well, so many people. And my voting plan is I'll be voting absentee, but I'm going to be going into the clerk's office this week. You can start doing that on Thursday, so I'm going to do that on Thursday. I'm also going to encourage everyone to have a plan by 10/20/2020, meaning we want to get votes in by October 20th of 2020. That's 2 weeks before the election. We're really encouraging people to go online now and request that absentee ballot, get it right, vote immediately and get it right in the mail, or better yet, drop it off at your clerk's office so you can vote safely from home. And you can drop it off at a drop box and do that safely and know that it will have gotten in time. So that's my plan, will be to do it in person this week. My daughter, who's at University of Michigan, is going to vote absentee. My husband's going to vote probably in person. We're all going to do it a little differently, because those are our rights, and we want to be able to make sure that those votes get counted. And I'll be thinking of the over 6,600 Michiganders who lost their battle with COVID. I'll be thinking about my daughters, whomever the next Supreme Court justice is going to impact their lives for a long time. I'm going to be thinking about so many different people, but I'm excited about casting my vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think that this is such an important moment.
And let's make sure we go over those mechanics of voting one more time. And I know the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, is doing a great job making sure that it is clear and safe, and doing everything to make sure that we have integrity in these elections. So early voting starts, is it this coming Thursday?
This Thursday. You can go into the clerk's office and vote on Thursday. Okay,
so Thursday through Tuesday, November 2nd. Got to register online by the 19th of October, but in person all the way through to Election Day, right? You can do that same day.
Right.
Okay. And I love this. Tell us again, 10/20/20.
10/20/2020. So we want to encourage people to have a plan so that they get their ballot cast and in by 10/20/2020. So let's just set that as our internal election date. Let's just plan to get our votes in the bank by then. So the last 2 weeks, if there are people who haven't been able to, we can help them get to the polls, or we can help facilitate so that their ballots get in on time. But if we can do that, we can use those last 2 weeks to keep people safe and to ensure that more get the opportunity to vote. So let's do it early. Let's do it whether it's in person or through an absentee ballot. Get those votes in by 10/20/2020.
I love it. I think that's even beyond Michigan a good way to think about it. Let's go ahead and make sure it's locked in. So all right, 10/20/2020, and by the way, wherever you are in the country, or even if you're abroad, an American abroad, iwillvote.com is a great resource to get information about in your specific state, how to make sure you're registered and how to lock up your plan. I know we're coming up on the hour. There's so many great questions that came in. Here's one from Linda. She says, a lot of my friends are anxious about November. What helps ease your worries, and what are you most excited for this election? I love this because this isn't just about holding off doom, right? I mean, we know what we're up against for sure, but what does kind of fill your sails, and what are you looking forward to if it goes right?
Well, I'm looking forward to electing the first woman vice president of the United States of America. I'm looking forward to electing my friend, Joe Biden, as our next president. I'm looking forward to sending Gary Peters back to the United States Senate, and Alyssa Slotkin as my congresswoman, and Haley Stevens. You know, I'm looking forward to an opportunity that maybe we get a House of Representatives here in Michigan that'll work with me to get our agenda accomplished. So these are all things that I'm really excited about, but I'm most excited that my oldest child gets to cast her first ballot, and it'll be for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Sometimes we won't leave anything to chance there and have those conversations with everybody we know and care about. That's so exciting. What, as you said, to cast your first vote in one of the most important elections in the history of our country. I love this question. I think it's a great one to end on from Chris, which is, if you weren't working in politics, what would you be doing? It's funny, I just had a chance to do an event earlier today with Mark Kelly, who's running for Senate in Arizona, and was an astronaut as well as a really distinguished Navy officer. And you know, for me, if I could have figured out how to be an astronaut, which is all I wanted when I was a kid, I think I'd have I think that'd be what I'd be going after. But Governor, what if you weren't in politics, where would you be?
You know what? I thought I was going to be a sports broadcaster all growing up. That was my plan. I wanted to. But when I was a kid, there weren't many women on ESPN broadcasting the sports news, and that's what I wanted to do. And my life took a very different turn, obviously, but I'm happy to be where I am, but that's something that I've always been passionate about.
That's great. Here's looking forward to when we can resume in the way that we love to, sports and so many things about gathering and campaigning and just being out there that we have to look forward to once we get the pandemic under control. And I know that's been your laser focus. Governor, can't wait till there's a chance to see you in person. But in the meantime, thanks for everything that you're doing to help elect Democrats up and down the ballot. And thanks for everything you're doing aside from politics to make sure that Michigan is able to move forward, and that lives are protected, and we get the economy back in the right shape. I'm such an admirer of your leadership. I almost feel like Sarah Palin. I'm tempted to say I can see Michigan from my house. That's not quite true. It's maybe 5 miles away, but I can definitely bike there from here and just feel so invested in your success and in your leadership. So thanks for everything that you're doing. Well,
Mayor Pete, thank you. Thank you for running. Thank you for staying in the fight. You're an inspiration. You've been an inspiration to so many people in our country, including my children. And I just want you to know I hold you in incredibly high regard, and I look forward to hosting you in Chasten next summer in Mackinac Island.
Well, thanks. That'd be a treat. Something to look forward to for sure. Thanks so much again for joining us. If you're watching us right now, make sure to take a moment to follow her so you can keep up with the governor and all the important work she's doing. Thanks again. We'll see you soon, I hope. Take care. All right, everybody. Hopefully, if you weren't already, you know why I'm a big fan of that woman from Michigan, which is a badge of honor and to her credit. And look, like we were talking about, it's election season, not just election day anymore. Voting is underway in some of the states around the country. So make sure you know how it works where you are. iwillvote.com. Especially because it's different a little bit this year for a lot of us, depending on your state, depending on what's going on. And even your area, your polling location may have changed from last time. If you are planning to vote in person, please make sure you've got that plan, that you're registered, that you're good to go, and that you know exactly what you're going to do, and that everybody you know and love, that you've had that conversation too. This is it. This is showtime. This is our one chance to change the trajectory of this country. And 2020 has been pretty brutal so far, but we get to decide how it ends. It's up to us. And I know that you're a part of that if you're following along. So thanks for joining us tonight. It's great being with you. I'll see you before too long. Stay safe and stay involved.